Welcome to another episode of Real People, Real Stories, where we provide you with compelling tales from everyday people just like you. I'm your host, John Wendell Adams, author of the novels Betrayal and PayBack, along with the soon-to-be-released novel, Ruthless. You can always find me by going to john@johnwendelladams.com. So for the next 23 minutes, let's get to today's guest.
I don't know, but I trust God. I have a plan. I'm going to try stuff. I'm going to keep moving, but I can't tell you what's going to happen. What I can tell you is that I trust God. Good afternoon.
Oh, man, really? Is it afternoon where you are? That's great. Yeah. I've been wanting to do this thing with you for some time. So thank you for arranging your schedule so you and I could hang out today.
Honored to be with you.
Yeah, well, great. Do me a favor. I mean, it's not that I don't know who you are, but if you would, just do three things. Just say who you are, where you live, and what you do. I'm
David Byrd. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I run a transformation office at FIU University in beautiful Miami, Florida.
See, now you say that, and there are a lot of people listening to this going, I think I'm a little envious. I mean, there's somewhere in Utah with a bunch of snow saying, gosh, when is it going to get warm? When's the sun going to come out? So Fort Lauderdale.
All that glitters is not gold.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I'm with you. Well, you know what? I want to jump right into this thing with you, David. And I want to talk about this compelling story of yours about how you transferred yourself and your wife from Chicago to Fort Lauderdale. I guess where I want to start is you were answering the call of a relative, a desperate call from a relative of yours. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so, I've had, as you know, several years of strategy consulting, consulting within corporations, as well as various leadership positions within corporations. I have a cousin down here who has a small business who she was struggling with losing revenue, losing clients, and losing employees. And for about 4 or 5 years, we would have these conversations and she would talk about the challenges and the effect and all. Right. And she invited me to really come assist. I felt the need to really, or the draw to come and assist her to help her get out of this situation. I had visited her years ago, and this was a booming business she had built. She had about 75 employees. She was killing it in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. Fast forward, and she's in the dumps. Things are going bad. She's telling me her staff is down to like 12 or 13, and some of her ex-employees are now her competitors. This is family. I've got to go help.
She has this desperate, urgent call, and you and your wife are in Chicago, very secure, established positions, and she's asking you to pull up stakes and move to Fort Lauderdale. What steps did you take to determine if you would answer the call?
Well, first and foremost was to have the conversation with my boss to see if she was interested in that. And when I say my boss, I jokingly mean my wife, my life partner, my best friend. And of course, moving to a warm area, anybody can get excited about that. But the real discussions were around, are you going to be able to work with your cousin or for your cousin? Is it large enough, given the background and experiences that you've had? Is this something you really want to do? Is this something you think you can do? Do you think you can really turn this thing around?
You talk with your wife, Monique. You talk with Monique, and she says she goes through the questions to you. I guess the question I would ask is, what were you really promised?
The promise was to come down and free her from day-to-day responsibility so she could go do business development, free her from having to deal with millennials that she was challenged in dealing with, to free her from the operational challenges that she was realizing she's not good at, and the promise of turning the company around, getting it back on its feet to create legacy. This wasn't about, you'll take over the company someday. It was about her letting go so legacy could be built, because she didn't know how to build legacy.
In the final analysis, you and Monique pull up stakes, you move to Fort Lauderdale. What really transpired versus what was promised? And the second thing was, how difficult was the transition for you?
It was not an easy transition, because Monique taught in the public school system. They had great success.
Sure.
We had partnered my nonprofit with their school. We were taking kids overseas, exposing them, giving them a different view, putting them in situations that really changed the trajectory of their lives. From close friends, mentors, fraternity brothers, everything. We had built a support system in Chicago we could depend on, count on, those that would lift us up when we needed, and those that would flatten us down if we got too full of ourselves. Walking away from all of that to an environment where there would be no one. Understand, my relationship with my cousin is not one that we were really close. So that transition, it took a lot for us to really make that decision, to come down and to utilize the methods that I had learned and been taught through my consulting career and others. You come in asking questions of her, questions of the existing employees. As she took me around to introduce me to clients, questions to them. Because what I needed to do was establish a baseline of what's going on. Someone can tell you what they're experiencing, what's going on, and what's happening. But until you hear the other side, you don't get the complete picture. So I needed to get the complete picture to fully understand and appreciate what's going on, in consulting. So that whole as is. So then you can set the to be, identify the gap, and then what's the plan to close the gap?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I've said it and done it and heard it a bunch of times, but having made the transition from Chicago to Fort Lauderdale, having your wife an established position and all the other things that you guys were doing, what was the working environment like for you, David?
The working environment turned out to be totally different than originally explained. Unfortunately, my cousin was old school, theory X versus theory Y. If you're not in the office, you're not working. And she felt she needed to be in on everything. Millennials operate a little bit differently. Tell me what you need me to do when you need it done. I'll get it done. They took notes on these, and she would assume they were on the phone playing and start, yelling and fussing at people for being on the phone, and they would turn it around and there's all the notes. It turned out to be a micromanaging environment that she was unable to let go of the day-to-day to go build new clients. All the way down, John, to she had to pick up the mail because there might be a check. It's like, well, we have a process. Back to the questions. What's the challenge with the check? Well, I need to get it in the bank. Okay. We get the mail, we process the checks, we get the checks to you with a journal each night. Well, no, I need to put it in as soon as it comes. Well, it needs to be processed. Those things didn't fully, she was in such a situation of despair. All processes went out the window. And she would yell at the accounting department for not having recorded checks and all, that she got the mail, she deposited, it was in her purse, at her house, or in her car. Through mystification or osmosis, the accounting department was supposed to know that the check came in.
Wow.
And even trying to show those situations and say, what do you need it by noon? We pick up the mail at 8. We'll have that by noon. It'll be there for you, either on your desk. We can run it to you. Let's put a process together. She could not think through that. And people who were leaving, when I started, there were a group that said, we're staying because we heard what you were going to be doing. And you sound different. So we're going to give you a chance. When they saw that the reality was I became almost like an administrative assistant because she didn't let go of anything, didn't stop being on people. This is nothing against you, but people were like, we tried this, we're out.
Earlier, that it seemed to me, based upon what was articulated, you would be that chief operating officer. And I guess
Right.
my question was, given all those things that you detailed, and that's just, I'm sure, just the top surface of what was going on. My question to you is, how did that make you feel?
Like I had made a huge mistake, that I had misread the tea leaves. What have we gotten into? And I say we, because my wife didn't move down here with a job. I tried every methodology for managing up that I had ever learned, and none of those worked with an entrepreneur who is in a desperate situation that felt, this is my company, not yours, so you don't understand.
What eventually happened with you in this company, David?
We were able to turn it around. I give you the 3 steps. Was first to focus on the funds that come in the door, putting some processes together, getting our projects organized in such a way that the client knew what to expect. So the client wasn't withholding payment due to unmet expectations. So now we get that going. We get out of the red, we're back in the black. COVID comes. As we progress through COVID, clients start to cut back, start to shut down. So we went through, okay, what we'll do is we cut up people's hours. We reached a point where we're cutting into the gristles. Now you cut all the meat and fat and whatever, and it's like, we can't do this anymore. So we both agreed that we would take pay cuts in order to not damage our staff anymore. Now, after one pay period, she decided, oh no, I'm not doing that. I built this business. I put money, time, all of that. Fast forward, she decided to lay me off. I've moved my wife from a great job, community and environment. I don't have a job. At that moment, she didn't have a job. Now, she had been interviewing and she had started to make connections back into the educational system here. But there we sit, fully relocated, house sold in Chicago, nowhere to go back to.
Right.
And it's like, what is going on?
Thank you for that. And I appreciate your frankness and candor as you told that part of your journey. But that really leads me to this part 3, if you will, and that is the journey to find the next opportunity. Tell me what that was like, you trying to find the next job in a city and a state where you hadn't lived previously, and your connection was with your cousin and such. Talk to me about what that part of the journey was like.
Yeah, Fort Lauderdale is a strange place. Unless you're from here, they discount your education, your experience, your skill set. I networked, met lots of individuals, and it just seemed as if nothing was really happening. My wife ended up getting a job, which was great, with Broward County school system, a much better position than she even had as a teacher. For me, you now have a wife that's working and you're not. And maybe it shouldn't be, but as a man, you look at yourself as the provider. And now all of a sudden, I'm not working. I'm applying for jobs. They're telling me I'm overqualified. You reach a point where you're ready to kind of give up. I've never been one to give up, and I've always been an encourager in my ministry. I've always tried to encourage people, give them the word. But I would tell you, the word was becoming hollow to me. Even as I taught, even as I still talk to people, I'm the chaplain of my fraternity, and I'm talking to brothers constantly. The kids who grew up through my ministry back in Chicago and through the nonprofit, I'm talking to all of them constantly, encouraging, giving them. But personally, it was as if it was falling on dry soil and
Yeah, I'm laughing, but I'll tell you, man, it's not funny because I can just hear not just the words you're using, but the emotionality associated that with what you just articulated, that must have been tough. That must have been really hard. How long, David, did it take you before it is that you actually secured the next opportunity?
2.5 years. My wife would always ask, what are you going to do? What's God doing? What's this? How are we going to? And my answer was always, I don't know, but I trust God. I have a plan. I'm going to try stuff. I'm going to keep moving, but I can't tell you what's going to happen. What I can tell you is that I trust God. I latched onto that. Many days and nights I cried. During the pandemic, she was working at home. I would leave, drive to the park saying I'm going to hit golf balls. I just go park. I would cry, have a conversation with God. You really learn that he likes to have conversations with us.
Yeah.
And those scriptures around Job, and though he slay me, yet I will trust him, through others that continue to trust him through it all. Man, to really experience that, and it takes it off the pages and makes it real and personal.
No, I get that. I hear you. And for it to have gone on, I mean, that could have happened in 6 or 8 or 9 months, feeling that despair. But for 2.5 years, it just listening to you, I can sense that emotionality that you just articulated. There must have been a time or two where you got to the end of your rope, right? If that is the case, and it sounds like, you reached that point, what happened?
So I reached a point where I felt I've done everything I could do. And when you reach the end of your rope, you tie a knot at the end of the rope and hang on more. I felt like I had even tied the rope around my wrists, whether on purpose or accidentally. And I just said, I'm done. I've only admitted this to 2 other people, and it was 2 very close friends and they could not believe. They were stunned and didn't know how to respond to hear me say I give up, because I'm always the encourager. I'm always, there's another way, just wait. But I reached the end of the rope and I just gave up. Kind of said, if it's going to be, you're going to have to do it, God. I don't know what to do.
As you came to, as I articulated, to the end of yourself, what are you doing today? And what does that look like? And if you could even explain how that came to be.
Yeah, what I am doing today is something I would have never imagined I would be doing. Working for the 4th largest university in the country, leading a newly created transformation office. Let me back you up. I get a phone call asking would I be interested in interviewing for an executive director, board of directors position at the foundation of this university. So of course you do your due diligence, you prepare, you look up, they tell you who you're interviewing with, all the preparation. Sure. I have 7 Zoom interviews. The first one with the HR, they say, if you get to this and there's an interest, we'll ask you to come in tomorrow. If not, we'll thank you, blah, blah, blah. So we're going through all of this interview, and I'm talking and trying to give everything I can and answer the questions and relate to my past experience and everything. And then they say, we'd like you to come in tomorrow. We're going to have you interview with another 5 people. Like, great. Where are you? They give me directions, or they give me the address and everything. You got to act like you know where it is and where you're going. I look it up. It's 52 miles away. I go through this series of interviews, seem like great interviews, come home, and I'm like, that didn't go bad. I get a call the next day from the CEO himself. It says, David, I called you versus having HR call you because I wanted to have this conversation with you myself. You didn't get hired for the job you interviewed for, but I want to talk to you about another position that I am going to create that I think you would be perfect for. And I go quiet. He's like, you there? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, what's wrong? I said, well, I'm still dealing with not being hired. He said, oh, do you want to talk about that little position, or do you want to talk about this big position that I'm creating for you? I'm like, okay, let's talk about this big position. And he says, I did some research on you last night. I made some calls. For some reason, all of this fits something I was thinking about that I didn't think I would end up doing. And so what I'd like you to do is come back in and talk to the head of our development and the head of our operations, because I think we could craft this position that will solve a problem that I have and have not been able to solve. I go in, I have the conversations with them, they craft this position and they say, let's do it on a 6-month contract while you and my other 2 team members craft this position fully and write it up so we can send it into HR and go through all of that process. I'm thinking, I'm writing the job description. The 6-month contract was a very nice contract. Matter of fact, everything that I had been interviewing for, it was better than those. Here comes a part of the blessing. Not only did God go ahead and create, excuse me.
Take your time. Yeah, take your time. I can only imagine. I can only imagine what has gone through your head and your heart associated with this. So take your time.
I asked the question, are there any benefits associated with this? And he says, what do you need? I said, what do I need? I need all the benefits. He's like, okay, give me a day. Give me a day. John, I have full state health insurance, full state retirement, full dental vision, all of that. And I'm a contractor. I'm not a employee of the university yet. I am finishing out a contract while we're working through the crossing the T's and dotting the I's of the contract. And do you know, he then said to me 3 weeks ago, David, you live too far. You need to relocate to Miami. So, well, my wife works in, in Broward County. She's at the district. He's like, oh, so you need to move closer, but she has to be closer than you are. But that hour commute is too much. Here's the areas I recommend you look at. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, you telling me to move? And he was like, no, we are relocating you. What part of that don't you understand? And I said, I've not seen the black marks on the white sheet of paper. So I don't know what a relocation to you looks like. Relocation to me is all the expenses associated with moving and buying the house, down payment, this, that, and the other. And he was like, okay, that's relocation. Relocation is relocation. So John, not only does this job come out of nowhere, I write the description going forward, of which we've already started doing. So I'm already doing the position, and they're about to relocate us closer to Miami, to where I'll have a 35-minute commute and my wife has a 15-minute commute.
Wow, wow, wow.
I could not have planned all of this. And so my wife said to me, I guess that's what trust looks like, because I wouldn't have wrote the script like this.
Sure.
If I could write any script I want, this is not the script I would have written.
Hearing that story, first of all, is super compelling from where you were to where, and I'm saying where you were in Chicago to where you were taken to respond to the call. And then that place of just despair, not having a job. And then to have this, I call it a miracle, man, because it's something that you can't really explain. I mean, you get a phone call and it morphs into what it is you just described. That's amazing. That is just amazing to me. I love the tale. I really do. I mean, as we move to the end of our time together, the question I want to ask you is, if you have the opportunity to talk to someone who's going through a similar quest, if you will, and they're on the front end of it, like you and Monique were when you were trying to sort through if you should respond to the call. Talk about what that looks like. And also, I want to ask you to respond to, okay, so it doesn't go according to plan, you get laid off, no job, 2.5 years. I mean, if someone is going through any portion of that process, what do you think you'd say to them?
If I only had a few moments, I would just say to them, trust him even when you can't trace him.
Yeah, say that again. I love that.
Trust him even when you can't trace him.
Yes.
See, we make plans, and you like to say, and then God laughs at our plans and does what he's going to do.
Right.
My faith is critical and important to me, and I put everything into it. I try to live it out. And this, to me, is a test that became a testimony, and one that I can tell anyone. What I saw from it more was her going through it, and her faith grew. You know, if we rewind, some 15, 18 years, because I've known you a long time.
Right.
I went through a severe test before.
Right.
And he brought me out.
Right.
So I knew, trusted, no matter what. But she had not gone through that. My wife everything's planned. She already has the next 3 weeks planned out. Matter of fact, this summer, going to France to see her parents, we already have our tickets. Not because get them in advance so they're cheaper. That's just her planning. Going to Portsmouth to see my family, we already got our tickets. You know, all of that stuff's laid out because that's how she operates. This faith walk, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Yes.
This faith walk where it's not in front of you. You can't touch it. You can't put it on a piece of paper and go, okay, step 1, step 2. It's not a Gantt chart that you can go through. I trust it. And so I try to tell people that your faith will be tested in ways that you never thought about. And wherever you think you're strongest, then you're going to be tested in those areas that are weakest. You know, I've never been a smoker. I've never really been a drinker. So smoking's not a problem. You know, alcohol's not a problem. You know, the things that I guess my biggest challenge has always been finances and being in control of myself or being that provider or whatever, not having to worry about it. I was put in a place where, I was down to where I had nothing.
Got it.
Where others may have a different challenge that they face. That was my challenge.
Well, David, I have to say, man, I mean, I think back on what it is that you and I have talked about here today, and the word that continues to pop up. In fact, there are two. One is real trust, and the other one is compelling. And I love that expression that you had about, you have to trust him even though you can't trace him. So you'd like to be out ahead of what it is that you're about to experience, but that's not real faith. I have to tell you, man, that I really have appreciated the things that you shared today. I think for anyone who ends up listening to this, it will serve as a guiding light for them should they be in a situation that even remotely appears similar to what it is that you described. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for doing this. I came into it kind of begrudgingly because I don't like to tell my story. I don't like to talk about me, but I am glad I did. You know, your wise counsel to convince me to do it.
I didn't have to twist your arm that far, but yeah. Well, you know what? In all seriousness, this thing is evolving, this now new role that you have. And it's not to suggest that it doesn't come without challenges, but the truth is what I'd like to do is actually have you come back and really talk about some other features of this faith walk that you've gone through and share some other words of wisdom as you continue to go forward.
I'd love to, because just real quick, as I execute this job, there's people in the job that are having personal issues, family issues, people are dying and everything. And I'll ask someone, do you mind if I pray for you? You mind if I pray for your family? And they look at me, kind of funny, and not necessarily let's hold hands and pray right then. I will pray for them. As I'm talking, I will sometimes, as we're looking at planning, I'll, use some scripture, write the vision, make it plain. I'll throw a scripture out and people will go, that's in the Bible. I'm like, oh, yeah, it is. You read the Bible too? And it opens up a conversation.
Sure.
So, I don't just try to lead in, but I'll do little things and let people see my walk. So I'm trying to live out my faith in the workplace.
I'd be more than happy to have you come back and share with us other things that transpire as it relates to this faith walk of yours.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it, man. So we'll talk again soon. You can always find me by going to john@johnwendelladams.com.